we might not even recognize or realize that our minds are being infiltrated.
Well, by people that we associate with.
People.
People.
Mm.
And people do people things, right? People things that may or may not be good for you.
All right, y'all. So listen, this is a special episode because we are sitting in my brand new studio space. We've been moving around a whole bunch. And the reason that I took the 2-year hiatus from doing this podcast is because I wanted to do some things different. I wanted to be on network television. I wanted in-studio guests. And I was like, listen, if you build it, they will come. So for those of you that are listening, I need you to head over to YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook Watch, TikTok, wherever you get your podcast in a visual way. I need you to come over and watch us because I am sitting here literally with a queen, with the blonde bombshell. We're both blonde bombshells today. So welcome to another episode of I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. I am here with Miss Marsha Thompson, and today we are talking about the passion for happiness. So right after this dance break, we're gonna get passionate about happiness.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. With Naja Hall.
Oh, Marsha. Welcome to I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall.
I am so happy to be here. It is just a dream come true, actually.
Really?
Because I know that this is what you wanted to do.
Yes.
Your dream has come true.
Yes.
And also, I wanted to experience your podcast on some level. So now I'm actually a guest instead of just a viewer.
Yes. So listen, I've known Marsha for a while, and she is, I don't see why she's so humble. Sometimes she ain't humble, but Marsha is an operatic soprano with one of the most angelic, beautifully powerful voices that I've ever had the privilege of experiencing. Now, tonight she's not talking about music. We're talking about life experiences and happiness. And we've talked about the science of happiness before. We've talked about the pursuits of happiness. We've talked about the definition of happiness. But tonight, Marsha is coming to teach us about a passion for happiness. But before we get this party started, Marsha, I did prep you beforehand. Everybody that comes on this podcast has to tell us why they know they are crazy. I mean, the podcast is called I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall.
Oh my gosh.
So why does Marsha know she's crazy?
I know I'm crazy because I take on too many things. I know I'm crazy because when I was a child, I saw some children playing violin, and I went up to the television and I looked at the TV and I told my mother, I said, yeah, I can do that. And my mom said, wait, you need lessons for that. I was like, it doesn't matter. I can do that. So that's how my life started. Anytime I saw something that I liked, that I wanted to do, that I wanted to try, for the most part, I've been fearless.
You can too. You are fearless. And I've seen you, I remember the first time seeing you play violin. We were hanging out at somebody's house.
Yes.
And they happened to have, I don't even know why they just had
because he was a violinist.
Oh, okay. Because a lot of friends are musicians. Mm-hmm. Marsha picks this thing up and we're like listening to maybe, I don't know, rap music, something urban. And Marsha picks the violin up and I'm like, Marsha, what the hell are you doing? How do you know, what other hidden talents do you have that most people don't know about?
Oh, well, I'm a good pie baker, for sure.
Really?
Also, I love the rodeo. Okay.
I
love the rodeo. I like cowboys.
Y'all heard that? Now,
yes.
Not to be in your business,
I like specifically, I like professional bull riding, PBR. And I also like to hike.
Okay.
I'm a hiker. And so I recently returned from Brazil. I was performing in Brazil. And after my show in Sao Paulo, I went to Rio and hiked a mountain.
Gosh.
And that was an amazing experience for me. And I was fearless. And actually, when the guide learned a little bit more about my story, we got to the top of the mountain and he said, there was a little bit of a struggle. At one point, I was like, oh my God, am I going to make it?
Why did I do this? Why did I do this?
And he said, I'm really proud of you. And I said, I'm proud of myself because at one point, I just started blessing the trees. I said, thank you, tree. Thank you, rock. All of the things along the path that helped me get up to the top of the mountain, because this wasn't a carved out path. Right. It was very, very rugged terrain. And so when I got to the top of the mountain, I said, thank you, mountain.
Thank you, Mountain, for being here so that I could get the experience of climbing.
Yes, that's right. It was
That's
a wonderful
beautiful.
thing.
So tell us a little bit about you before we get into the passion for happiness and why you wrote the book and you explaining to us and teaching us what that means. I know you're from Louisiana.
Yes.
You're a Louisiana girl.
Southerner.
But just give us Marsha's backstory. Aside from being this boisterous, fearless little Marsha, tell us about that.
Well,
wait, I'm sorry, Marsha. We didn't toast first.
Oh,
we
my
didn't
goodness,
cheers.
what are we thinking?
Listen, y'all, this is like inaugural episode. Cheers.
Cheers. And congratulations.
Cheers to one of many.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, that's strong.
Ooh, that's a little, what is that?
That's a cider. That's a sparkling cider you have.
Sparkling cider with 8.2% alcohol, by the way. So who knows if I'm going to make it through the interview without, loose lips, sink ships. It's like we're going to keep it on the straight and narrow.
Holes in the operation sink the ships.
Okay.
So tell us about Marsha. Give us the backstory on who you are.
So the backstory is that I was one of the first Black children in the Suzuki program in Shreveport, Louisiana, where I grew up. And I think ever since then, I always felt like I belonged in any space I wanted to be in. And a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the interview. But for me, I just saw something that I wanted to do, that I wanted to experience, and I always felt like I deserved to be there and I belonged there. Even if there was a tinge of fear in exploring, I always moved through the fear. So that's a little bit about me as a person and how I think about, moving through this life. But other than that, I moved to New York City a week before 9/11 from Houston, Texas. I had been living there, going to school there, and I moved to New York a week before 9/11. I
always like to ask people their New York story. What made you come, of all the places in the world, what made you choose New York City?
I know, right? I had no idea that I would be moving to New York because my agent that I was working with, I would fly back and forth from Houston to New York City for auditions. And I said, I'm never moving to New York. And I said, I can't stand New York. I said, I'm just going for my auditions. One day, I was packing my bags and throwing clothes in my bags. And I said, I can't wait to get out of Houston. I said, I can't wait to get to New York. And I said, oh my God, what did I just say? I just said, I can't wait to get to New York City. And that's when I knew a shift was happening. And when I arrived that particular time, I decided it's time for me to move.
Okay.
And it wasn't me necessarily deciding, everything that we do in life, we move in life, we think, okay, I'm making this decision. I'm
in control.
But there's something that moves us to make that decision. And it's more of a metaphysical thing and a spiritual thing rather than a hard, it's all my idea. Right? So I moved here a week before 9/11 officially, after I sang my European debut as Aida with the famous stage and opera director Franco Zeffirelli. And I sang Aida in Milan, and it was just a wonderful experience. And then I came back here, and a week later 9/11 happened.
So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go to New York. Boom. We have the Metropolitan Opera. We have all these opera houses here. This is a perfect place to be.
It was.
To pursue that. But then the entire globe shuts down.
Yes, shut down. The arts were severely affected.
That's the last thing people want to think about is entertainment and arts, when pure devastation had happened right here.
It happened right here. And the fall of the year is when all of the opera auditions happen. So right after 9/11, that was a whole season of auditions that didn't really happen. There were a few things that started to trickle in the month of December, but for the most part, it was pretty devastating to the business. And of course, New York was like a ghost town. Can you imagine going to Times Square and seeing 8 people on the street? And
the closest we got was COVID, but there were still people.
There were still people out, right?
But 9/11, I imagine trains were not working. There's no taxis, because I don't think Uber and Lyft was back then.
No.
But so it's a ghost town.
It was almost a ghost town. I had a friend who was living in New Jersey, and he called me, and at the time I was living in the Castle Hill area of the Bronx.
Yeah.
And he called me and he said, I can't take this anymore. He said, I have to go out. He said, let's go to a movie. And I said, well, where are we going? I said, I'm not coming to New Jersey. And he said, let's meet in Times Square. And I counted all of the people that I saw in Times Square. There were 6 people in the AMC theaters on 42nd Street. Can you imagine that?
I literally could not imagine, because that seems like a zombie apocalypse type of situation.
Was.
So
it really
I couldn't
was.
imagine that. So then you said something really prolific though, poignant. You said, we think we're in control, but it's really a force. How did you put it exactly?
I said that it's a metaphysical push that causes us to make those decisions in life. And sometimes we can be conscious of it. People who are really in tune with that aspect of who they are, they're in tune with the fact that, oh, there is a shift that's happening and it's moving me in this direction, right? And sometimes people are just moving along blindly, thinking they're making these decisions in life, and they don't know why they're making the decisions. So I always think about it as a metaphysical shift that happens, and then the decision or the choice happens after that, when we're making real moves in our lives.
So then how do people that are unaware, because they're like, okay, I'm in control, I'm making these decisions, I'm at the forefront, they are completely unaware that there's something metaphysical. How do we develop that awareness?
You know, it's interesting because I think that you have to want to develop it, first of all.
Okay. So you have to know that that you're lacking awareness?
Well, some people know that they're lacking a certain level of awareness, and there are always events in life that happen. For instance, when I turned 25, something happened. There's just thoughts that popped in my brain. I said, oh my God, I don't even know how to buy a house. I said, and I started going down the list of things that I didn't know. And I walked into my parents' bedroom, because at the time I was living with them for a brief moment before I moved to New York.
Yeah.
And I said to them, I just realized that I'm really stupid. That I'm really
I don't know a lot.
I just don't know a lot. I know, a lot of people hate that word, but I'm really ignorant of a lot of things. And I said that to my parents. My parents laughed so hard.
They're like, oh, baby, keep living.
Because I realized, I said, okay, from this point on, I'm choosing to be aware of the fact that I don't know something. And some people are unaware that they don't know something.
Completely.
But that also goes with the fact that if you don't know something about buying a house, for instance, then there's probably something that you don't know about yourself. So I had to grow and learn along the way, obviously.
Okay. So writing the book, what made Marsha say, I am going to be an author? I know when I started my book series, Girl Bye, she's not going anywhere, neither are you. I did it not under the guise that I was an expert, but I felt a very strong connection to one very particular topic. And I felt like I had not necessarily mastered that niche, but I wanted people to know what I knew so it wouldn't take them as long to get from point A to point B. I wanted to shorten the journey. And how do you do that? You put it in a podcast, put it in a song, you put it in a book. So how did you get to the point of saying, I've had these experiences, I have this knowledge and this expertise, I'm going to jot it down so that I can share and disseminate this information?
Well, it all started with my hair business that I had in the early 2000s. Before, I was one of the first Black women to import hair from Russia, China, India, Vietnam. And I had people calling me in the early 2000s in New York City asking me where I got my hair from.
Yeah.
And it was a labor of love. I had all of this extra energy, and I would stay up late at night and have conversations with my vendors in China. It was 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I would wake up and go to work. And the name of my company was The Passion for Beauty.
The Passion for Beauty. I like that.
It was The Passion for Beauty. And I sold hair to kosher Jewish ladies on the Upper East Side. I sold a lot of hair to exotic dancers. I sold a lot of hair to people who had chemotherapy related hair loss. And then I I wanted to get funding to grow the business. And one day, I had a big shipment that was lost. It was devastating.
That's detrimental.
It was devastating. It was like almost $10,000 worth of merchandise, which is a lot for a small business owner, right?
That's a morale killer,
Yep.
a confidence killer, and
Absolutely.
could shut your business down because you probably have pending orders. You have to give money back.
Right.
You have
exactly.
to pay.
Exactly. So it was all of that, right? Paying people back who had made their orders, et cetera, et cetera. Things were much slower back then, obviously.
Right. Bad reviews, a bad reputation.
Exactly.
And you can't control what happens with the seed.
You can't. And so then the recession happened. And when shortly thereafter, the recession happened. When the recession happened, oil prices went up. And so that means the price of goods went up. And I decided that because a lot of people in New York City got laid off. Mm-hmm. I knew people with 2 Ivy League degrees that didn't have jobs.
Could not find a job.
Exactly. And I said to myself, if this is the case, then women are also struggling financially and they don't have the discretionary funds for hair. When people spend money on beauty products, whatever the beauty product may be, it's always their discretionary money. So I just knew that it was time for me to pivot after that. Mm-hmm. And I went ahead and continued to sing, continued to work on Wall Street as an assistant when I wasn't singing. And then the recession became more and more difficult for, all industries in New York City. My dad called me. He said, I have this big project that I'm working on, this engineering project, and I need help. And you're not really working right now. He said, do you want to come help me? I said, sure. And so that instituted a lot of other experiences, which led to me becoming a medical device sales representative.
We have talked a lot about that, especially in our exchanges on beauty things. Marsha has taught me all the things about the medical devices. We need a whole different episode just on that.
We do, because medical devices are so important and so interesting as far as aesthetics are concerned.
Keeping it tight and right.
But also in the realm of our own inner workings in our body and what questions to ask medical practitioners when they're going to do a procedure on you or perform surgery on you. And those are questions that people really need to understand when they're talking to their doctor about their medical issues.
Yeah.
But I digress.
So then the concept of the passion for happiness, and just getting to the meat of how does one put all of these grand ideas and experiences they have pen to paper? What's the process? What's Marsha's process? So
the passion for happiness stemmed from the fact that in my 20s, I really struggled with depression, and in my early 30s. And I said to myself, there has to be a better way. And I learned through one day waking up and saying to myself, choose happiness. And I made a choice. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, choose life. And I said, I'm choosing life. I'm choosing happiness. And that's how I'm going to move forward in everything that I do. And it was a process. It didn't happen overnight. So the passion for happiness became a practice for me. And over the years, I read, I listened to speakers on YouTube, I exercised, I trained myself to eat a better diet. And many times, we don't, as women, sometimes we don't connect our happiness with our biological functions. But that's also another thing that you have to counter if you are having any kind of female reproductive issues, extreme cramps, endometriosis, et cetera, et cetera. And so it became a practice, even though I was also experiencing some of those difficulties. And as I have lived my life and become more, more of a professional practitioner
of happiness.
Right. And my daily psychological diet also reflects my passion for happiness. And so I wanted to write a book about that. I wanted to write a book that is a guide to people to help them even in the very minute ways, understand how to tap into that aspect of building a passion for happiness.
So before we talk about this daily psychological diet, because I'm curious about that, how does one define happiness? How do you define and quantify happiness?
So that is such a good question, and there are tests online. There's a quantitative happiness test. There are several questionnaires that you can take online that will quantify happiness from a, how do you feel in this moment perspective? How, on your daily sojourn, do you like your job? But how I quantify happiness is your baseline. So even though you're grieving the loss of a family member, even though you may be sad about losing a job, even though you may not be content where you are in your life, you might want to make more money, you might not like your weight, etc., etc. The baseline of where you exist always has to be happiness and contentment. And then you look at the things that you are going through and you say, well, yeah, I'm really grieving the loss of this family member. But the baseline of where I am is happiness.
Okay.
Because grief is how should I say? It's not necessarily temporary, but it's like thoughts that are attacking you in that moment.
It comes in waves, they say, with grief.
And it does, and it comes in waves. Anybody who's experienced extreme grief, and I have, will tell you that it does come in waves. But it's not that you are depressed. It's just that you are going through this moment in life. And to counter that, to focus on your passion for the happiness that you are working to create in your life and working to maintain is actually your core state of being. And that's how I like to think about happiness. It's your core state of being. Even though so many other things may be happening around you or trying to invade your thoughts within you.
You mentioned something, and I wasn't even thinking along these lines of us talking about grief on an episode about the pursuit of happiness. But I think this is a really good place to kind of explore grief, because grief comes in so many forms.
It does.
From so many different sources. Personal disappointment, loss,
anger,
right?
Yes.
Resent, frustration.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you talk
and then also sometimes grief can be physically debilitating. But go ahead. Yes.
Can you talk about a specific moment in your life when you were faced with ultimate grief and how you climbed your way back to your baseline of happiness?
Yes, absolutely. My family, unfortunately, we had a very tragic double homicide in my family back in 2013. And it was so tragic. It was so sad. And I could not even say it for a very long time. I would stutter and could not even get the words out to talk about it. But it's important to talk about it when you're ready, because so many people are going through the same thing, right? So many people are experiencing grief, and they need to know, well, how do I overcome this?
How do you overcome something like a double homicide? Are you in a place to talk about?
Of course. I don't want to necessarily name names,
of course,
or say the family members, but they were both family members I was very close with, extended family members. I was very close with them, and at the time, I was a new medical device distributor, and I had foot and ankle implants. And I also had a regenerative biologic that was used in surgeries for mastectomies and amputations.
And these are the devices that you were selling.
And these are the devices that I was selling and talking to doctors about. And I noticed that after the deaths and the funeral, that I could barely lift my head off of my pillow and service my doctor clients.
So you're in a state of depression.
Yeah.
The grief was depressing you.
Right. And then I was also, I was sad, but my baseline was, I'm grieving the loss of these family members that I loved, but I personally am not depressed. You understand?
So, but
I
you
knew
said
that
you couldn't.
I knew I was cognizant enough of where I was in my life to know that I wasn't depressed.
But you're
That it
saying
was
you can't
grief.
get up off the pillow. I
Yep.
can't do my job. I can't perform. Some would say that is clinically described as being in a depression.
Right, but depression, clinical depression, and grief are two different things.
Okay.
So grief is, again, it's a psychological affectation, and I'm not a psychologist, but I do happen to know this. It's an emotional affectation that, plagues us for a moment or for moments in time. And so I was lying in bed, and a doctor would call me and say, "I'm doing this procedure today. I need the kit." And I would put the kit in my backpack because it was a small kit, but it was titanium, so it was heavy. It was kind of heavy. And I would put the kit in my backpack, and I would go to the doctor. And one day I just looked up and I said, "God, I'm lying here and I'm having such a hard time. What is it? Why, even though I'm not depressed," and I said this, I said, "I'm not depressed." I said, "But I can barely move." And then that's when the voice said to me, "You're grieving." And that's when I understood what grief felt like. You understand?
Heavy.
Yes.
Debilitating. Suffocating.
Yes, absolutely. And so then I said, "Well, what do I do?" And you know what the voice said? God said to me, He said, "Don't move." He said, "When I need you, I will call you." And I laid in bed in the morning, and if a doctor didn't call, I stayed in bed. And then if a doctor called, as a matter of fact, what would happen was God would wake me up from a deep sleep and say, "I have something for you today." And then the phone would ring, and it would be one of my doctor clients saying, "I'm doing a procedure. Can you bring the kit?"
That's that awareness that you were talking about a few minutes
Yes.
ago. That's what that is.
But also listening, because the awareness also involves listening to what's happening within, right? And so always being aware. And let me tell you, it wasn't that I was hyper aware all the time. Again, it's a practice that you become better and better with over time. And so that's the core message of my book, and the core message of what I'm sharing with other people right now. Because how serendipitous is it that my book has come out right after the election? And a lot of people are sad, right? A lot of people are going through actually a grieving process. And some people are physically ill, some people are emotionally ill because of what they've seen, because they might not agree with the election results. And I say that you too can be happy.
You can be happy.
Absolutely.
Happiness.
And that can be your baseline, regardless of what is happening around you.
Yeah.
And regardless of what thoughts are attacking you. Because I also look at thoughts as something that can attack us, but that we also have the power to block.
Good way to segue into the daily psychological diet that you talk about in the book.
Absolutely.
Because you just said, how do we keep these thoughts from attacking us and invading us? And, one thing we know is thoughts lead to depression, anxiety, all of these disorders and things that we call mental illness. And they start here. So what about this what about the diet that you meant, the daily psychological diet? What does that mean?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's multifaceted. It's multifold, right? It is what you feed yourself. So if you're feeding yourself social media and you're looking at negative content on social media, which is huge right now, right? A lot of people are focusing on snippets from podcasts where men may be berating women, or where women are talking about their negative experiences in their relationships, or where you're watching something negative that has played out in someone else's life, and
the negativity and the drama does get clicks and views.
It gets clicks and views, absolutely, and that's how it surfaces in our feed. So once you click, or once you spend a certain amount of time on,
Perfect. Okay, good. Let's see.
Let me stop this one.
On the sound.
okay.
So we're going to start off at the daily psychological diet. 5 4, 3, 2, 1. So, Marsha, you mentioned this daily psychological diet, and I think this is kind of a good place to segue. You know, we're talking about the nasty, toxic thoughts. We're talking about consuming media that can lead to nasty, toxic thoughts.
Right.
What is this daily psychological diet that you mentioned in the book?
Yes, because I do talk about social media and how we should be using social media.
You have a whole chapter on tech, as a matter of
I
fact.
do. I have a whole chapter on tech. And so some people use social media for entertainment, right? Entertainment purposes only. I use social media to learn new things, and I also use it to encourage myself and to listen to and follow pages that only talk about psychological conditioning.
So the negative pages, you have blocked them from your feed, or you've made it so that your algorithm doesn't get the smut.
They don't even come up. They don't even come up.
Because we control our algorithms, y'all. It's us.
We
if
do.
You want to click, like, when I was getting ready to dye my hair blonde, I was looking at all these tutorials like blonde toner, blonde dye, bleaching hair. And now in my algorithm,
that's it. That's all you see.
But if you are constantly looking at propaganda and negativity, your algorithm that you built brick by brick is going to show that.
Right. And also because our algorithm is so tied to our biorhythms in our body, which people don't realize that that's what's happening on their phone. Everybody's phone has a biometric sensor. As a biometric sensor. And I don't know what it is on Android, but on iPhones, it's the little heart. It's already preloaded onto your phone. So when you're viewing certain things, watching certain things, and you can block it, of course. However, if you want to keep it on your phone.
Who thinks to even block that though?
Right. You can block it, but I mean, even if you do block it, I don't know if it's really truly blocked. And that's another thing. So when you have a certain reaction to something you view, or you're clicking something you view, all of these things are stored in our data, in our bio data. And you understand. So
what I'm reacting to,
if you spend too much time on a negative video, then more of those videos are going to circulate in your algorithm. And this is what happens with people who believe in conspiracy theories, etc., because they spend a lot of time on those videos, and then the videos start to take them down a rabbit hole.
And they're going to be fed to you more and more and more. So conspiracy theorists, they're constantly being fed the things that are, like you said, taking them down this rabbit hole of darkness.
Yes.
So what is that doing?
So what we're doing is we are practicing a negative psychological diet. And we are feeding ourselves a diet that is going to affect us once we stop viewing what we're viewing.
It's still in there.
It's still
because
there.
We have to process it and digest it.
And it's still circulating in your subconscious and affecting things about your mood, about your thought patterns and everything once you stop viewing it. So that's why I talk about it in the book, because here we have lots of people now after the election. They're continuing to watch the news every day. They're continuing to read the news. They're continuing to talk about it with their friends. It doesn't mean that you don't need to be informed. You understand? We all need to be informed, but we also need to not practice focusing and dwelling on it, because at this point, there's nothing we can do. We did what the people who voted, right? We did what we needed to do. Now it's time to figure out how we're going to live our lives.
How do we move forward?
Exactly.
You know, when I go to Memphis on the holidays or whatever to visit my parents, without fail, I go to, when I had grandparents, God rest all of their souls.
Bless them.
I go to mom and dad's house, the news is playing from the time they wake up, which is 6 a.m., an ungodly hour, until they go to bed. And I said, Mom and Dad, why do y'all need to watch the news? And my dad says, I need to know what's going on. I was like, we're in Memphis, Tennessee. There's homicide. There's crime, some sort of crime.
Right.
There's tons of car thefts. And there's one feel-good story about a lady that's just opened up a bakery for blind dogs. But other than that, why do you need to watch this stuff? What do I say? And the people out there watching, to the people that our family members, our loved ones, the ones that have gotten sucked into the conspiracy theories, the ones that think they need to be informed,
plugged in.
Yeah, what do we say to them to make them unplug?
I just like to tell people that eventually your psychological diet also affects your physical functions in your body.
Ooh. Headaches, sickness,
nervousness. I love the author Louise Hay. And if you've ever read
oh
the
my God,
book,
all of her books are right over there in my bookcase.
I love Louise Hay, right? And she even has this menu of physical ailments and the psychological causation of each physical ailment. You know what I'm talking about. It's in the book, You Can Heal Your Life.
Yeah.
And I just love that.
Heal your body, heal your mind, heal your body.
That's right. She's got that one too. And so she goes down the list of psychosomatic causes of every ailment that you can think of almost.
Yeah.
And I also like to think of the daily psychological diet as preparing the body to remain healthy. Because everything is here. You can heal your body, heal your mind first.
Aside from tech and absorbing and consuming all of this negative media, propaganda, unnecessary media, what are other ways where we might not even recognize or realize that our minds are being infiltrated?
Well, by people that we associate with.
People.
And people do people things, right? People things that may or may not be good for you. And so as you grow and you learn and you self-assess and reassess where you want to be and where you want to go in life, sometimes you realize that the people that you're with have not always been beneficial for where you're going. And that is also part of your psychological diet.
Ooh, hold on. We got to pause. People.
I know, because we love our friends. We love our family and our associates, right? And we want them to come along with us.
Yeah.
That's not your job to pull them with you when you're going somewhere. That's not your job. That's not your job, your responsibility, nothing. Now, we can inform and encourage, but it's not our job to sort of drag them kicking and screaming, right?
When do we know that persons, relationships are no longer unhealthy for our psychological diets?
Or no longer healthy for our psychological diets?
When do we know?
Honest with yourself. And that's the thing, being honest with yourself when you see the signs and letting go. And we you know what I'm saying.
Oh,
We've all had those experiences in our lives, right? If you live past the age of 21, you're going to have a few moments in life where you realize, oh, I've got to move on from this relationship. It could be anybody, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, it could be anybody.
Yeah.
And it's painful when you have to let go. It's painful, but it's something that you have to do in order to re-emerge as the person that you're supposed to do and claim your passion for happiness. That's how you do it.
So recognizing that sometimes a relationship has reached the point to where you recognize we can't necessarily grow together anymore. I appreciate, and I've had some friendships like this. Like, wow, we've outgrown one another. We're in different spaces in life. I love you and I respect the experiences that we've had together. So you don't bash the person. I don't believe in bashing.
Absolutely.
Friends.
Absolutely.
With friend breakups, with moments like that, are we compelled? Should we feel compelled to tell a person that
No.
Why not?
You just you have a moment, whatever that moment is, and you need to move on. There's no need to explain yourself.
So you don't need to have a breakup conversation with friends?
No, you don't.
But what if they notice that you're moving different, you're acting funny, you don't call me back as much, we don't hang out anymore? People are human and they notice differences and changes in our patterns.
If they ask, it's fine.
What do you say?
But if they don't ask, it's okay to not reach out to them and explain yourself.
Because they're kind of moving away as well.
Yes.
But what about when they are concerned and they aren't necessarily at the place and having this epiphany that this relationship has reached a peak? What do you say in that conversation?
In the past, what I've said in the conversation is, I care about you as a person and I wish you the very best in life, but I'm going to move on in my journey.
That's how you say it. You keep it very brief and concise, and you let it be what it is. Whatever feelings that person is having about the statement, and you can, use the words that work for you.
Yeah.
But whatever feelings that person is having about the statement, those are their feelings. Those feelings don't have anything to do with you.
And they're not your responsibility.
No, and I've said that to ex-boyfriends that I've said goodbye to. I said, I really love and care about you as a person. And I think that this relationship has run its course. And I'm going to move on with my life at this point. And I did. And you know what? They were so grateful, because why waste each other's time?
Yeah. And I'm sure they were hurt and didn't necessarily want that.
Yeah.
But I would respect somebody being straight up with me instead of
Absolutely.
stringing me along and lying
Or
and wasting
ghosting them. I
Or-
don't believe in ghosting.
Can we talk about ghosting?
I believe in ghosting.
Can we talk about ghosting?
I
and
don't
this
believe in
phenomenon?
ghosting.
Ghosting is not new.
It's not.
The name is new,
Right.
as of maybe the past 10 years.
Yeah.
It's an old phenomenon that's been happening probably
Absolutely.
since Adam and Eve.
Absolutely, absolutely. So ghosting is an inability to accept your feelings when you tell someone else, no, I gotta go.
Say that again, because I didn't listen, so we can absorb that.
Because some people don't want to address their own feelings of guilt when they say, this is no longer working for me. Because it's really a lack of courage.
Marsha, so I was gonna, because when you were saying that they don't want to acknowledge
It's
your feelings
really
of
a lack
guilt,
of courage,
the first thing I
yes.
said was, this sounds like a coward.
Yes, it's really a lack of courage, and obviously a lack of self-awareness, because people who are not courageous don't want to be self-aware. They don't want to feel those feelings. So that's why I'm always very, very upfront, because I feel like it gives that person a chance to process whatever they're feeling without having any sort of doubt about where we stand. So there's no doubt where we stand. This is what it is, and I'm moving forward.
And you just happen to be a courageous woman that is not cowardly, and you can't. How did you put it? You said they can't accept how they feel. How did you put that again?
They can't accept the feelings they feel when they tell someone else their truth.
Ooh!
Yes.
So let's switch gears a little
That's
bit.
what it is. Because some people, it's like guys who stay in a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship, especially. I'll speak about that. They're staying in a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship because they're comfortable with the person, but they don't really like the person. And women do the same thing, because I don't want to be single, but I don't really like him anymore. You see? But it's in order to move to the next level, to the next stage.
You gotta let it go.
Yes, you absolutely must.
You have to let it go.
And in order to deal with everything in a very emotionally aware and mature way, you have to be upfront. There's no alternative.
That's hard.
It is hard. It's
I
hard.
can't say hard. That's hard for some people.
It's hard.
That's hard for a lot of people, because I think culturally, and even if we're speaking just in terms of women, when we talk about being upfront, we are not taught to be forthcoming.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I think we're bred, a lot of us, to be docile. And if you are forthcoming, or you just simply stand up for what you want, then you're called a bitch. You're
Yes.
called a diva. You're called names that are associated with being difficult.
Well, and you can always say what you want to say and be very open and honest and respectful at the same time, right? Because some people, if they're breaking up with someone, and especially if they're angry, they're going to say mean and hurtful things because they want to hurt that other person when they're walking out the door.
Yeah.
I understand that. I really do. But it really takes a lot of self-control to not do that. And so I always advocate for people controlling themselves and saying, you can even say, you really hurt me, especially if you're breaking up with a narcissist. Don't tell them that you really hurt me.
Yeah.
If you're leaving a narcissist, don't do that.
Just go.
Just
Don't even explain. Just
You don't
go.
have to explain, but you can tell the person, I've learned a lot from this relationship.
Marsha, this has been quite a loaded interview. We went so many places that I did not know
So many.
that we were going to go. But if you had to summarize the passion for happiness in just a sentence, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you again for having me on your show, your inaugural podcast. What an honor. I'm so proud of you, and I'm just overjoyed to be here. And the way that I would summarize the passion for happiness is a daily action that you take in order to create the life that you want. Through guided actions, I'm going to have guided actions, daily actions on the Passion for Life Instagram page at the Passion for Life. And I'm working on an addition to the series of books, because this is going to be a series of books.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yes. So I'm really excited about the passion for happiness, how it will touch people's lives, how it will help them to improve their daily psychological diet, and understand that happiness is not something that you pursue that is beyond you. Happiness is something that you're passionate about that is within you. And so that's why I didn't use the word pursuit. I used the word passion, because we're not pursuing it. We are it.
We are not pursuing happiness. We are happiness. I think this is an excellent place for us to thank Marsha so much for joining us on another episode of I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. Marsha, can you tell everybody exactly where they can find you? And guys, all of her links will be shared down below.
So I am on TikTok at The Passion for Life on TikTok. I'm also on Instagram again at The Passion for Life. And then my personal Instagram page where I talk about my singing career and I talk about all things that I enjoy doing in my own personal life at Marsha Thompson Official.
So make sure you follow Marsha every single place and you tell her that you heard her on I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. Listen,
Yes.
I love you all and I thank you so much for being here with us. 5 years, I think we're 4 or 5 years in now with this podcast. Oh my God, can you guys, with a 2-year break, but stop judging because y'all know y'all need breaks too. So I'm glad that we're back here in the swing of things. Please make sure you subscribe, like, share, spam with comments. We need the algorithm to make sure that it does its thing.
Yes.
Everywhere you see I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall, make sure you click. And I thank you so much for loving me because I love you. And I'll see you next Tuesday everywhere your favorite podcasts are streaming.
I know I'm crazy.
Marsha, that was good. Cheers.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. Naja Hall.